Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Hi, preschool peeps.
Hello.
So it's Monday, and we're back to regularly scheduled programming where we will release an episode every Monday morning. And as you just heard and or saw, we are back with our logo and our music, and we're just putting things kind of into back into play that we had before the health crisis. Though one of the things we didn't have before the health crisis was showing us doing this podcast on YouTube, and we're going to keep that.
We like that.
We're going to keep. Yeah, we listen. Good things come out of difficult situations all the time, and I think us having to figure out how do we get this on YouTube for people so that they can connect with faces when we were all in shelter-in-place orders.
You got to see
us. Right, and it helped us to see people like it. People like it. So we're going to keep posting to YouTube, but thankfully we're so happy to welcome back our music and our intro.
Our logo. I miss the music. Yeah.
feels a little more typical for us.
Just a little bit, little steps.
which is my awkward segue to schools might open and childcare might open, but they're not going to be typical. It's still emergency education.
Still emergency school. This is not your even new normal, I don't think.
No, no, it's not. You know,
it's your temporary normal, maybe?
It's your temporary emergency schooling, doing the best that places can figure out with the current crisis and crises, really. There are multiple crises.
So much going on.
So much. So I think that we have to keep in mind as children may head back to things, even like camp, if they're heading back to day camp and then they start to head back to school buildings at whatever schedule different school districts come up with and different areas come up with, that this is still emergency education. You remember, Allison, sort of toward the beginning of this crisis, we did an episode where we talked about how people are not being homeschoolers.
It's not homeschooling, it's emergency schooling.
It's
right?
crisis schooling.
It's crisis schooling, yeah. Because what homeschool is totally different than what was going on this time, for us.
Right,
totally different.
Right.
Yeah.
And likewise, the purpose of childcare, elementary, middle, and high school is partially things that we now have to alter, having to do with socialization and social emotional development at all those ages, having to do with how we march through the day, even the ability to offer children things like switching classes and going to specials and, as they get older, the ability of younger children to play near each other without having to wash their hands 1,000 times and without potentially masks, depending on where you live. And I know some places, I was speaking with someone, an early childhood educator recently. She told me that her school purchased, the clear dividers that you see in the supermarkets and all that now?
Yeah.
So companies are coming up with them for preschool classrooms to put between the children as they sit at tables together, if you're unable to distance tables. And you were talking about, Allison, preschool classes having desks instead of group tables, right?
Yes, that they're not going to have tables. They're going to each have individual desks is what I was told. So
this is different. I keep seeing on social media people saying, open the schools. Folks, this is still not going to be typical education. This is not going to be typical socialization. And I hope that people realize, both professionals and families, that this is still doing the best we can in an ongoing emergency situation.
Yeah.
Granted, we're not used to a long emergency.
This is a long emergency that keeps rolling and changing as every day goes by. So, So even your best laid plans, I think, kind of get halted sometimes. That's happened in our state with a couple different things that tried to reopen. So we're doing our best here. I know administrators are trying their best here, but I think the people who you're seeing on social media who are like, open the schools, like maybe don't realize that it's not going to be every day. I don't think for a lot of these children, you know, I mean, most districts are doing a half on, half off, I think, kind of thing, a half in person, half virtual. I don't want to say off because they're not off, but like, you know what I mean? So like, I think.
Yeah, because they have to keep the population down.
So it's, and I don't want people to think like, oh, that's just the new normal, because I don't think that is either.
I keep seeing that. It's funny you bring up that phrase, Allison. It's funny you bring that up, because I keep seeing that. I just saw it the other day with the new normal, and then someone else posted, not beat me to it, honestly, just posted, no, there's nothing normal about this. And
there's nothing normal about that.
I really, I agree with that. And I also like that person who posted on social media, and several people actually who I've seen post this sort of sentiment. I almost fear that we will start to feel like it's normal, because it's not optimal teaching environments. And we don't want this to become just how things are done in the future. You know, when we're going to hit normal, a different normal is after the COVID-19, very long time, you're right. After the COVID-19 crisis ends, people are immune, or we have a good treatment, or we have good vaccination, or something happens where it's not such a threat, then we have to figure out what parts of this crisis stay, things like consistent hand washing, mask wearing, staying home if you're sick. Which parts of this stay as a part of our society now? You know, in other countries, wearing a mask when you don't feel well is just common practice. It just hasn't been where we are. So maybe that becomes common practice. It becomes common practice for employers to figure out different ways to pay sick pay or what to do with that. Becomes common practice for people to have more emergency plans for their children. Should they become sick? You know, maybe some of this stays and that becomes part of what will be normal in the future. But what's happening now, folks, it's still an emergent situation. It is still emerging, and it's still emergency, both emergent and emergency. We're still getting information all the time, and
it's always changing. Everything's always changing. So like,
it's changing.
The plan that you have in place is not your new normal, because tomorrow something new might happen and it's going to have to change. You have to be very like fluid, I feel like very like, okay, you know, and you can't expect, for me, when you call it the new normal, that means it's going to last for a very long time. The new normal would last years. Okay. Yeah. But this type of schooling, we don't want that to be the new normal, because then it just will be like that.
We just don't want it to be forever. I mean, I would like for this crisis to end, and then we go back to what are better practices for children. And I think that I know it's somewhat semantics, it's somewhat the wording, but sometimes we get words in our heads and it changes how we think. We need
That's
a better 100%
word. True.
we need a better word. We need to say this is how it is temporarily.
Temporary situation, or temporary schooling.
Temporary schooling. I like that word.
Schooling.
Temporary schooling. Allison, we should consider that for the title of this episode.
There you go. So we were talking about titles.
I'm writing it down. We've been talking about titles for half an hour. Temporary. I'm just writing the word temporary so we remember.
I'm going to write it, because sometimes.
And people who are listening can now be like, oh, that's where they came up with the title. This is how they do it. They brainstorm.
I've been really, like, this past week thinking, like, everybody kept telling, like, not everybody, but somebody kept telling, like, you got to think positively. So instead of like saying like, oh, this is awful, like, oh, we're doomed kind of thing, to be like, nah, it's okay. We're going to get through it. And we're going to be, you know what I mean? Like, to kind of be like, this is not the end. You know what I mean? Like, it could be the beginning of something really good, you know, like if you take the changes, like Cindy was saying, take the good things that happened out of this really awful situation and then make changes, you know? So like, instead of like thinking like doom and gloom kind of thing, you know, so instead of saying like, this is the new normal, that tells your brain like, oh, this is just the way it is, you know, and saying it's temporary could kind of be more uplifting, a little like, okay, this is, you know.
Also more, hopefully more truthful to say it's temporary, right?
Yes.
It's like we said, it's going to be a long temporary, I think. And I also think it wouldn't surprise me at all if there were additional closings. I don't know how long they'd be, but if there were additional closings, or, you know, we don't know yet what happens. Do we know what happens? Like, let's say there's positive COVID cases in a school. Like, do we know what happens? How long do you have to close?
I don't know. Because I read different things. I read like the whole school has to close for like 2 weeks. And I also read it might just be like individual classes.
Oh.
But I don't know. If it goes to my school, I'd be like, bye. Close the whole school because I ain't coming.
Well, I don't know why we laugh because it's true. We're laughing because it's true.
True.
And I won't even be there because, as I have said to many of my clients, I'm going to continue to consult with you remotely because I have no desire to be Typhoid Mary running around the state and the country.
Typhoid Cindy.
No, that wouldn't be wise.
Well,
you
also,
know,
like schooling is just not gonna, like, if
it's
you're
not gonna be the same.
If you're expecting schooling to be like, oh, we're gonna go back to school and have our meet and greets and have our back to school nights and have this and have that, and parents can come in and mystery, all of that's gone. So like, it's not a normal school year. It's not.
No.
So stop thinking that it is. Okay. Take that out of your brain and say, this is temporary. This is the 1 year we won't have back to school night.
I really think this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't do this. And I really think this. I think that fear is a very powerful emotion.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes when I hear people or read people saying, oh, stop it, just put the schools back the way they were, what the person is really saying is, I want life to go back to the way it really was.
Yeah.
And I want life to go back to what it was in February 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't. And I think part of being able to move to that place we're going to end up has to be acceptance. We can't go back. We've all been impacted and affected, and our educational systems will be too. Yeah. We can only start from where we are and go forward, but we can't even really do that yet, knowing that the children will be on different schedules, or partially virtually, partially in school, or the school year will be different, or, you know, whatever changes are being made now, we haven't reached that point yet. Right. Where we can say, okay, here's where we are. Now we have all the things at our disposal. Let's see where we're going to move forward, because we don't have all the freedoms and all that at our disposal yet. Does that make sense?
Yes. And who knows when we're going to have them all? You know, so
I don't know.
I know. I do agree with you that the ones that are saying like, oh, everything should just go back to normal, are the ones that are just fearful that it's not going to go back. I mean,
it's not going to go back.
It's not going to. It's not. It's not going to.
And I'll tell you what, as you and I have said before, there are parts of education that I hope don't go back.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, for sure. You know, and I don't, I do remember, like, they're just not there yet, those people. They're not in the acceptance phase. And I do remember being during this crisis having that period of time too, where I was like, no, I'm just not accepting this. It's just not the way it is. And now I'm like, I'm more in that place of like, all right, yeah, I know that's not. And then there's other things I still got to work on. So they're just not there yet. They'll get there.
Well, eventually you have no choice. You know,
they have no choice. They might not have a choice, but still, they'll get there.
After 9/11, where they said to us things like, "You're not going to be able to walk your relatives to the gate in an airport."
Yeah.
And people were like, "What?" And now you would be afraid of people without a ticket going down to the gate.
Do that.
So,
you
right?
You don't even think about it now.
It'll become part of the culture, whatever happens. But we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
We're not at that place yet, which means whatever is happening in childcare, preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, and college, whatever is happening right now is temporary education.
Yeah.
In the midst of a crisis. We haven't exited it yet.
Yeah.
And I hope that almost gives teachers comfort when they're thinking about, oh, this is going to be so terrible and hard. Folks, you're in a crisis situation. It is.
And it is hard.
It is really hard.
It is
You brought up before,
hard.
Allison, that to you it feels almost like when this first started, right?
Yes.
When you were talking. Mm-hmm.
Yes. It feels like we're back to, well, for me, emotionally, like I'm back, because I feel like all this stuff, like I was like, okay, yeah, I know school's going to go back, whatever. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait, what? what do you mean that's going to happen? Like, it was even like, I think like hearing it all was just like too much for me to handle, and I was a little broken yesterday. So and it made me unbelievable. Yeah, it made me, well, because I went to a reopening committee for my school, and I knew it wasn't going to be the same. I knew that. But hearing all this stuff, it just made me so unbelievably sad for the kids. So unbelievably sad for the parents. Like, it just made me so sad that I was like, oh, these kids are going to be at desks all day. You know, they're pre-K kids. You know, like, I was just like, that's just not, it's not the education they deserve. You know, like, I get the kids in their first year of school that come to my school. So for me, it's like, it's just not going to be the same. And I think I need to mourn that a little bit and realize, like, that's okay. You're going to give them what you can give them in this kind of circumstance.
Yeah.
You know, like,
right.
So, I mean, but yesterday, like, hearing it all, I was like, I need to lay down not think for a minute. And I remember, like, I was just so broken yesterday. I was just like, I can't do this. I don't think I can do this.
Did I text you? I'm trying to, there was somebody I texted when I was watching our governor talk about guidelines. And I just texted, I'm extraordinarily sad listening to this.
Yeah, I think that was me.
Yeah.
You were sad earlier in the week, and I wasn't there yet. And I was like, nah, it'll be all right. And then yesterday I was like, what? Now I know how you felt when you heard the guidelines. When I read the guidelines, I was like, all right, yeah. And then to hear it from, like, my own school, I was like, oh, that's sad. Then I got sad. I'm still a little sad about it. Like, I'm still not.
You know, will the kids be okay? They'll be okay. Will the kids adapt? Yes. Will, you know, I don't want to act like the kids won't function. The kids will function to the best of their ability in this system. But we know it's not best practice. We know that.
Right.
We know this is not high quality. This is not best practice. And I hope that people just don't take those measures of high quality and best practice and throw them out the window forever. It can't be thrown out forever. And I think we do have to sit with those measures and say, well, what can we do? What is the best way that I can do this best practice with all the parameters I've been given during this emergency?
Right.
So I think we finally came down to it, right? We finally came down to, when we started this episode, we were like, all right, let's see where this takes us. And here's where it took us. Here's where it took us. It took us to, this is temporary, and we need to look at it and say, I'm going to do the best that I can in this situation that we don't know how long it'll last, but we can't throw out what we know is best. We have to always keep it in the back of our minds that this is the goal, to get back here someday.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I want to go back to that someday, but it's not going to be tomorrow. So everybody who's yelling, fling the doors open and take my kid in, it can't safely happen. We know that. Look what's going on around the country. As we're recording this, isn't it something like 30-something states are on the rise? It is not.
I think it's more than that. I think it's 38.
Is it 38 now? And people who did things too quickly, the states who did things too quickly are the ones who are really struggling now. So the fact that they have to ease children back into school and see how it goes, well, that's probably the wise thing to do. You know, in Israel, they opened schools too soon, too quickly, brought them all back too quickly, and they ended up closing them down. A lot of them.
Well, in the
find
Bay
those articles
Area,
online.
Yeah, in the Bay Area, they reported that principals got together for a meeting, and now one of them, I think they said one of them had COVID, didn't know it, and so now all 40 of them are quarantined. Because they insisted on having an in-person meeting, which don't have an in-person meeting, but that kind of was
meeting people.
But to me, I'm like, okay, that was just one meeting for a couple hours. You want to, you know, like, it was just like, how are you going to?
There's a lot of things. If we're going to go back to questions from the vault, which we should do another episode of questions from the vault. Because I have some questions about how one thing is not okay, but schools are. Like, I I'm confused.
I am confused. Yes.
Yeah, I'm confused.
I'm confused by that. I have
we'll get to
other
that
topics for the vault too.
Yes, we have other topics. We will get to that in a future episode, I'm sure. But for now, I hope that this episode helps frame for people what's happening as schools and camps and childcare and all of that reopens. Here's what's happening. Temporary, difficult situations.
Yeah.
Temporary and difficult.
I want to say, like, teachers and staff members out there, you're not alone. You're not alone, because we're all going through this. So reach out to your fellow teachers, your friends, us, anyone.
Mm-hmm.
If you just need to bounce ideas off, if you just need to be like, listen, I'm freaking out right now, like me. Okay. I think sometimes when you talk to your fellow coworkers or your colleagues or people like us that you might not even like have ever met before, other than on here, it helps, I think, sometimes to just talk it out. You know, so do that. Don't go inside yourself. I was inside myself yesterday. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, it's not good.
It was not good. It was not good. It was not good. So you have to talk it out and you have to get through it. And
send us your questions, because as we've said before, the 100th episode is going to come eventually. It's going to come slower now because we went back to once a week, but it's going to come.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So we are going to collect questions. So we're going to, on an ongoing basis, collect questions for that episode. So contact us through our website, howpreschoolteachersdoit.com, or on Facebook. You'll find us there too, on a page.
Yeah.
And please rate us 5 stars. And
I like my special effects for you guys on YouTube.
People on YouTube. For the people who are not on YouTube, she's moving her hand back and forth. It's really not high tech.
Now I'm flashing.
Yeah. All right. You'll be okay. She's not really flashing. She's flashing her hand. This is a G-rated. Okay.
Maybe people will tune in then.
Yeah. I don't know. So we're going to catch you next time on the podcast, which will be next Monday. Don't miss us, because we'll be here.
We're here.
Bye, preschool peeps.
Bye.